Sign the papers, Emily. It is over.
Emily, I'm sorry.
I forgive you, but I'm not coming back.
Emily Hart walked into the attorney's office in the same black dress she had worn to her father's memorial, and her husband was already waiting with divorce papers on the table. Ethan sat beside Vanessa, the woman he had called a colleague for months, and told Emily he was tired of carrying someone with no future. He believed she was just the broke daughter of a school janitor. He did not notice the sealed envelope waiting beside the attorney's hand. Welcome to today's story. If you enjoy emotional drama and shocking twists, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more unforgettable stories. And before we begin, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. 48 hours earlier, Emily still thought grief was the only thing she had to survive. The morning began in the small rented house she shared with Ethan on the edge of Albany. It was clean, quiet, and modest, the kind of place Emily had chosen because it was close to the care facility where her father had spent his final weeks. Ethan had never liked it. He said the street looked tired. He said the neighbors looked like people who had stopped trying. He said it as if Emily had personally dragged him down by loving a simple life. Emily stood in the kitchen with her father's old work jacket folded over one arm. Samuel Hart had worn that jacket through 32 years as a custodian at Roosevelt Elementary. The fabric smelled faintly of laundry soap floor wax and the peppermint candies he kept in his pocket for the teachers who worked late. Emily pressed the sleeve to her chest and tried not to fall apart. Upstairs, the shower turned off. Ethan was getting ready for the memorial like he was getting ready for a client lunch. Careful tie, expensive cologne, shoes polished bright enough to see his face in them. When he came downstairs, he stopped at the bottom step and looked at Emily's dress. "You're wearing that?" he asked. Emily looked down. It was plain black knee-length, the same dress she had worn to her mother's service years ago. "It's my father's memorial. I know what day it is." Ethan checked his watch. "I just thought you might want to look a little more put together. People notice these things. They're coming to remember my father." "Right." His mouth tightened. "Your father, the janitor." The words were not loud. That made them worse. Emily looked at him, waiting for regret to cross his face. None came. Ethan had always been polite in public and sharp in private. Lately, the sharpness came faster. Since his promotion at Westbridge Consulting, he had started measuring everything by status: restaurants, cars, friends, even grief. Emily folded the jacket carefully and placed it on the chair. She did not argue. She had learned that dignity sometimes looked like silence, but inside something in her pulled away from him. At the memorial, Ethan played the part well enough when people were watching. He stood beside her near the framed photo of Samuel smiling in his custodian uniform. He nodded when former teachers hugged Emily. He shook hands with the principal. He even said Samuel was a good man, with the smooth tone he used in conference rooms. But when the speeches began, he stepped into the hallway to take a call. Emily saw him through the glass doors, shoulders relaxed, voice low. He was smiling. Not kindly, not sadly. A private smile. The kind he no longer gave her. When he returned, Mrs. Alvarez, a retired teacher from Roosevelt, was telling Emily how Samuel once stayed all night after a pipe burst so school could open the next morning. "He never wanted praise," Mrs. Alvarez said, wiping her eyes. "But everyone depended on him." Emily nodded because speaking would have broken her. Ethan glanced at his phone again. After the service, a man in a dark navy overcoat approached her. He looked out of place among the school staff and neighbors. Not flashy, not showy, just controlled, formal, and quietly important. His silver hair was neatly combed, and his eyes softened when he saw Emily holding her father's jacket. "Mrs. Hart," he said. "I'm Harold Whitmore. I represented your father in several private matters." Emily blinked. My father had a lawyer. Harold gave a small nod. For a long time. Ethan stepped closer at once. What kind of private matters? Harold looked at him, then back to Emily. Matters that should be discussed after probate procedures begin. Not today. Probate. Ethan gave a short laugh. Samuel didn't have anything to probate. No offense. Emily felt heat rise in her face. Harold did not react to Ethan's tone. He simply reached into his coat and handed Emily a cream-colored business card. It had his name, a number, and an address downtown. No firm logo. If any documents arrive, Harold said quietly, do not sign them without counsel, and do not discuss your father's estate until I've reviewed the sealed package with you. Emily stared at him. Sealed package. Harold lowered his voice. Your father left instructions. Before she could ask more, Ethan placed a hand on her back. To anyone watching, it might have looked supportive. Emily felt the pressure in his fingers. A warning. She's exhausted, Ethan said. Whatever this is, it can wait. Harold's gaze stayed on Emily. Some things can wait. Some things should not be opened too soon. That night, Emily sat alone at the kitchen table. Her father's jacket hung over the chair beside her. Harold's card lay next to a stack of sympathy envelopes. Ethan had gone upstairs claiming he needed sleep before an early meeting. But Emily heard his voice through the floorboards. No, Vanessa, he whispered. I said I'll handle it tomorrow. Emily stopped breathing. A pause. Then Ethan laughed softly the way he used to laugh with her years ago. She won't fight it. She doesn't have the money. Emily did not move. Her hand closed around Harold Whitmore's card until the edge pressed into her palm. Then her phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. Mrs. Hart, your father's sealed estate package has been secured. Please come alone. Emily read the message 3 times before her eyes could accept the words. Mrs. Hart, your father's sealed estate package has been secured. Please come alone. The kitchen was still except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint creak of floorboards above her. Ethan was still awake, still whispering to Vanessa, still speaking about Emily like she was a problem to be managed instead of a wife sitting downstairs with her father's jacket beside her. She turned the phone face down on the table. For a moment she wanted to march upstairs and ask him what he meant. She wanted to hear him deny it. She wanted him to look ashamed. But the sound of his laugh reached her again, soft and careless, and something in Emily settled into a colder place. She picked up Harold Whitmore's card and slipped it into the inner pocket of her purse. Then she opened the small drawer beside the sink, took out an old envelope of her father's papers, and placed it under the false bottom of her sewing box. It was not much. A copy of his facility paperwork, his final medical bill, a handwritten list of people he wanted thanked after he was gone. But it was hers, and for the first time that night, Emily felt the need to protect anything connected to him. Upstairs, Ethan's voice dropped lower. No, I'm not waiting weeks, he said. The sooner I file the cleaner this is. There's no property, no investments, nothing complicated. Emily's fingers tightened on the edge of the drawer. Nothing complicated. That was what Ethan thought her father had been. A man with work boots, a pension, and a rented room at a care facility. A man who died with more handwritten notes than possessions. A man whose life could be summarized in 2 boxes and a funeral program. Emily looked toward the chair where Samuel's jacket still hung. Her father had never cared if powerful people noticed him. He had been the kind of man who wiped mud from hallways without complaint, then stayed late to fix a teacher's broken desk because, as he used to say, people did better work when the small things around them held together. Emily had built her life around that same belief. Quiet work, quiet loyalty, quiet love. Ethan had mistaken all of it for weakness. The next morning came gray and heavy. Emily had not slept. She moved through the house, carefully making coffee she did not drink, folding the memorial guest book into tissue paper, placing sympathy cards in a neat stack. She kept Harold's card in her purse and her phone close, but she did not call yet. The message had said, "Come alone," and Ethan had not left. He came downstairs at 8 in a navy suit, his hair wet, his expression already impatient. "You look awful," he said. Emily looked up from the table. "I didn't sleep." "Well, I can't do grief all day, Emily. I have meetings." She waited. He opened the refrigerator, frowned at what was inside, and shut it again. "I'm staying late tonight," he said. "Client dinner." She looked at his left hand. His wedding ring was still there, but loose, as if he had already stopped belonging to it. "With Vanessa?" she asked. The question landed cleanly. Ethan turned slowly. His face did not show guilt, only irritation. "She's part of the team," he said, "and frankly, she understands what I'm trying to build. I need people around me who see bigger than this." He gestured vaguely at the kitchen, the old table, the sympathy cards, her father's jacket. Bigger than bills and dead-end memories. Emily felt the words hit, but she did not give him the satisfaction of seeing them break her. "My father's memorial was yesterday," she said quietly. "I know." He grabbed his travel mug. "But life doesn't pause because someone dies." No, Emily thought, but love should. She did not say it. At noon, Ethan finally left. Emily watched his car pull away, then waited until the street was empty. Only then did she call the number on Harold's card. He answered on the second ring. Mrs. Hart. He did not sound surprised. "This is Emily," she said, though he clearly knew. "I received a message last night about a sealed estate package." A brief pause followed. She heard paper shift on his end, then a door closing softly. "I'm glad you called," Harold said. "Your father instructed me to reach you after the memorial, but only when you could speak privately." "Why privately?" "Because he believed certain people around you might act differently if they thought there was something to gain." Emily closed her eyes. "Mr. Whitmore." "My father was a custodian. He didn't have anything worth this much caution." Harold's voice softened. "Your father was many things, Mrs. Hart. Custodian was only the part he allowed most people to see." The room seemed to tilt, not dramatically, but enough for Emily to grip the back of a chair. "What does that mean?" "It means I need you in my office tomorrow morning. Bring identification, your father's death certificate, if you have a copy, and any documents in your possession. Do not bring your husband." Emily looked toward the stairs where Ethan's words still seemed to hang in the air. "Is this about money?" "It is about your father's instructions," Harold said carefully. "The financial questions will require verification, probate filings, and trustee review. I will not discuss figures over the phone. Figures, not belongings, not debts. Figures." Emily swallowed. Before she could ask anything else, Harold added, "There is one more thing. If anyone pressures you to sign divorce paperwork before we meet, do not refuse in anger and do not agree in fear. Accept copies. Say you need counsel. That is all." Emily's heart kicked hard against her ribs. "How did you know?" Again silence. Then Harold said your father worried about Ethan. Emily sat down slowly. Outside, a delivery truck rolled past. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked. Life went on with insulting normalcy, while Emily held the phone and felt the first thin crack appear in the story she had believed her whole life. That afternoon, she went back to the memorial hall to collect the framed photograph of her father. Most of the chairs had already been stacked. The flowers were wilting. The guest table was nearly empty, but two men in dark suits stood near the back exit, speaking quietly with the funeral director. Emily slowed. They were not neighbors. They were not teachers. They were not anyone she recognized from her father's world of school keys, coffee thermoses, and polished hallway floors. One of them noticed her. He stopped speaking at once. Then, with a kind of respect that made Emily's skin prickle, both men turned fully toward her and lowered their heads. Not in sympathy. In recognition. The two men did not speak at first. They simply lowered their heads, not deeply enough to be dramatic, but with enough intention that Emily felt it in her bones. It was the kind of respect people gave in boardrooms, courtrooms, and private rooms where ordinary people were not usually invited. It did not belong in the back of a modest memorial hall, with folding chairs stacked against the wall and wilted flowers on a plastic table. Emily held her father's framed photograph tighter. "Mrs. Hart," one of the men said. He was broad-shouldered, clean-shaven, and looked like someone who chose every word before letting it leave his mouth. "We're sorry for your loss." "Thank you," Emily said carefully. "Did you know my father?" The man looked toward his companion. A quick glance, a silent agreement. "We knew of him," he said. That answer made Emily's stomach tighten. The funeral director stepped forward too quickly, nervous in a way Emily had never seen from him before. "Mrs. Hart, these gentlemen were just making sure everything was handled respectfully. Why would they need to do that?" The second man, older with a leather folder tucked under his arm, gave her a gentle look. "Because your father asked that certain arrangements be watched after. My father asked you through counsel," he said. "Through counsel. Not through friends. Not through the school. Not through the facility where Samuel had died. Through counsel." Emily thought of Harold Whitmore's voice on the phone. "Your father was many things. Custodian was only the part he allowed most people to see." She wanted to ask their names. She wanted to demand the truth right there beside the framed photo and the half-empty coffee urn. But she could feel the warning in Harold's message. "Do not discuss your father's estate until I've reviewed the sealed package with you." So Emily did something Ethan never expected from her. She held back. "Thank you for coming," she said. "If Mr. Whitmore sent you, I'll speak with him directly." The older man's expression shifted. Not disappointment. Approval. "Of course, Mrs. Hart." She walked out with her father's photograph under her arm and a strange pressure building behind her ribs. For years, Emily had believed her father's life was small because he chose kindness over ambition. But now men in suits were lowering their heads to her in a memorial hall. Lawyers were telling her not to sign anything. Ethan was planning a divorce because he believed there was nothing to take. The distance between what people believed and what might be true was starting to scare her. When she got home, Ethan's car was already in the driveway. Emily stopped at the curb for a moment. His early return was not normal. His client dinners never ended before midnight. The lights were on in the living room, and through the front window she saw him standing with his mother, Diane. Diane Hartwell was not Emily's mother-in-law by bloodline, but she carried herself like family rank was something she had invented. She wore pearls to grocery stores and treated waiters like furniture. Vanessa stood beside the fireplace. Emily's hand tightened around the frame. She entered quietly. All three of them turned. Diane looked first at the photo in Emily's arms, then at her black dress, then at her face. "Oh, Emily," she said with a softness that did not reach her eyes. "You still look so worn down." Emily placed the photograph on the entry table. "I wasn't expecting company." Ethan cleared his throat. "We need to talk." Vanessa looked away, but not before Emily saw the small, satisfied smile at the corner of her mouth. Diane sat on the couch like she owned the house. "This is difficult, but sometimes difficult things are merciful when handled quickly." Emily looked at Ethan. "You brought your mother and Vanessa here for this?" "Don't make it sound ugly," Ethan said. "We're trying to be respectful. Respectful would have been waiting more than one day after my father's memorial." His jaw tightened. He did not like that she had said it in front of them. Diane sighed. Your grief is understandable, but Ethan has been unhappy for a long time. A marriage cannot survive on obligation. Vanessa finally spoke, her voice smooth and careful. No one wants to hurt you, Emily. Emily almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because the lie was so polished it looked rehearsed. Ethan took a folder from the coffee table. Manila, legal-sized, heavy enough to be real. I spoke to an attorney, he said. These are preliminary divorce papers. Nothing final yet, but I want to start the process. Emily stared at the folder in his hand. So that was why he had come home early. Not because grief had softened him. Not because guilt had found him. Because he wanted signatures before Harold Whitmore could explain whatever Samuel had hidden. You already had these prepared? She asked. Ethan's face hardened. I've been thinking about this for months. Months, while her father was declining. While Emily was driving to the care facility after work. While she was calling doctors, reviewing medication lists, sitting beside Samuel's bed as his breathing grew weaker. Ethan had been planning how to leave. Diane leaned forward. It should be simple. You don't own property together. There are no major assets. Ethan is willing to let you keep most of the furniture. The furniture. Emily looked around the room. The second-hand bookshelf. The old dining table her father had repaired. The couch, Ethan said, embarrassed him. The life she had tried to make warm with very little help from him. Vanessa's eyes flicked toward the kitchen, then back to Ethan. She was already measuring the space as if Emily had vanished. Emily reached for the folder. Ethan seemed relieved. Too relieved. But she did not open it. I'll review this with counsel, she said. The room went still. Ethan blinked. Counsel? Yes. You don't need a lawyer for this. That would just waste money you don't have. Emily held the folder against her chest. Then it should not bother you if I take time to understand what you're asking me to sign. Diane's expression sharpened. Don't turn this into a fight. I'm not fighting, Emily said. Her voice stayed steady. I'm refusing to be rushed. For the first time that day, Ethan looked at her, as if she had done something unfamiliar. Not powerful. Not yet. But inconvenient. Vanessa touched his arm. Maybe give her the night. The gesture was gentle, possessive, public. Emily saw it, and something in her finally stopped reaching for the man Ethan used to be. He exhaled hard. Fine. But don't drag this out. I need a clean break. A clean break. From the woman who had buried her father yesterday. Emily walked past them toward the stairs with the folder in her hand. At the landing, she stopped and looked back. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight, she said. And Ethan, Vanessa doesn't stay here while I still live here. Diane gasped softly, as if Emily had been rude. Ethan's face darkened. This is my house too. Then you should understand boundaries. She went upstairs before he could answer. In the guest room, Emily locked the door. Her hands were shaking now, but she did not let herself cry. She took a photo of every page in the folder without signing anything. Then she placed the papers beside Harold Whitmore's card and her father's death certificate. At 10:43 p.m., her phone rang. Harold's name appeared on the screen. Emily answered before the second ring. His voice was calm, but there was urgency beneath it. Mrs. Hart, I need to move our meeting earlier. Something was filed this afternoon, and your father's probate instructions have triggered a protective review. Emily sat up straighter. What does that mean? It means Harold said your husband may have just forced us to open the first sealed document. Emily did not answer right away. She sat in the guest room with the divorce papers spread across the bed. Harold Whitmore's voice pressed against her ear, and the locked door between her and the man who still thought she had no one. Downstairs, Ethan was moving around the kitchen with the angry rhythm of someone who believed he had been inconvenienced by boundaries. A cabinet shut too hard. A glass hit the counter. Then Diane's voice murmured something Emily could not hear. "What do you mean?" He forced it open. Emily asked. "Your husband's attorney submitted a preliminary notice requesting financial disclosures," Harold said. "That is normal in a divorce. But because your father anticipated the possibility of outside claims, his estate plan included a protective trigger. When a spouse creditor or third party attempted to establish interest before probate review, the first sealed instruction could be opened by counsel." Emily looked at the manila folder on the bed. Ethan had not filed out of sadness. He had filed because he thought speed would protect him. "What does the first instruction say? I can't discuss the full contents over the phone. Not ethically and not safely. But I can tell you this. Your father left specific directions about Ethan." Emily's throat tightened. He knew he suspected. Strongly. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. Emily stood and crossed to the door, lowering her voice. "I can come now." "No," Harold said immediately. "Not tonight. Bring the papers he gave you. Bring your identification. Bring anything your father kept in your home. And Mrs. Hart. Yes, do not leave those divorce papers where your husband can access them. They may matter later." Emily ended the call with her fingers cold around the phone. For a moment, she simply stood there listening. On the other side of the door, silence gathered. Too much silence. Then Ethan knocked. "Emily." She did not answer. "I know you're upset, but locking doors is childish." She took the divorce papers from the bed and slid them into her tote bag beneath the folded memorial program and her father's death certificate. Then she opened the closet and pulled out the small fireproof box she kept for important documents. Ethan had mocked it once, calling it her little disaster kit. Inside were tax returns, insurance papers, copies of her father's care facility forms, and the spare key to Samuel's storage unit. Emily placed the divorce papers inside and locked it. Ethan said again, sharper now, "Open the door." She opened it halfway. Ethan stood in the hallway with his tie loosened and his expression dark. Diane hovered behind him near the stairs, pretending not to listen. Vanessa was gone, at least for now. That absence made the house feel less crowded, but not less cruel. "I need those papers back," Ethan said. "No." His brows lifted. "No, I'm keeping the copies you gave me. I'll have counsel review them." "You don't have counsel. I do now." Diane made a small, scoffing sound. With what money, sweetheart? Emily looked past Ethan to his mother. She was tired enough that fear had started turning into clarity. "That's not your concern." Ethan stepped closer. "You're making this hostile." "No. You brought divorce papers into this house the day after my father's memorial. You brought your mother. You brought Vanessa. I asked for time and a lawyer. That is not hostile." His face flushed. He had expected tears, maybe pleading, maybe confusion. He had not expected sentences with edges. "You need to understand something," he said quietly. "I'm trying to make this easy for you. If you start dragging lawyers into it, I won't be generous." Emily almost smiled, but there was no humor in it. Generous with what, Ethan? The furniture Diane's mouth tightened. Ethan stared at her as if she had slapped him. For years, Emily had softened every sharp moment. She had apologized first, lowered her voice first, made peace first. Standing there in the guest room doorway, she realized how much of their marriage had depended on her willingness to make herself smaller. She stepped back and reached for the door. "I'm done talking tonight." Ethan caught the edge before she could close it. "Don't forget who paid most of the bills around here." Emily met his eyes. "And don't forget whose grief you tried to schedule around your affair." The words landed hard. Diane inhaled sharply. Ethan's grip loosened just enough for Emily to close the door and lock it again. She leaned against the wood, shaking now. Not from regret. From the force it had taken to finally say something true. She slept very little. At dawn, she packed her tote bag with the locked fireproof box, her father's jacket, his old key ring, and the framed photograph from the memorial. Ethan was asleep in the main bedroom when she slipped downstairs. Diane had apparently left during the night. The living room still smelled faintly of Vanessa's perfume. Emily paused at the kitchen table. Her father's old mug sat near the sink. Blue ceramic, chipped handle. He had used it every time he visited. Ethan had always hated that mug, saying it made the kitchen look like a thrift store shelf. Emily wrapped it in a dish towel and placed it in her bag. Harold Whitmore's office was not in a flashy tower. It sat on the top floor of a restored brownstone near downtown Albany, discreet enough to miss if someone did not know what they were looking for. The brass plaque outside read, "Whitmore Legal Group Estates Trusts Private Governance." Private governance. Emily stared at those words before pressing the buzzer. The receptionist knew her name before Emily gave it. "Mrs. Hart," she said softly. "Mr. Whitmore is expecting you. No clipboard. No waiting room full of clients. No casual questions." Emily was led down a quiet hallway, lined with old black and white photographs of buildings, factories' rail yards, and men in suits standing beside machines from another century. One photograph caught her eye. A much younger version of her father stood at the edge of a group, not in a custodian uniform, but in a tailored coat, his posture straight, his expression guarded. Emily stopped walking. The receptionist looked back, but said nothing. Harold opened his office door himself. He was dressed in a dark suit with a stack of folders already arranged on the conference table. Beside them sat a sealed cream envelope with Emily's name written in her father's familiar handwriting. Her knees nearly weakened. "That's his writing," she whispered. Harold's face softened. "Yes." Emily walked to the table but did not touch the envelope. "Before we begin, Harold said I need to confirm your identity formally and explain the limits of what we can disclose today. Probate will take time. Trustee review will take time. There are assets that cannot be discussed until verified. Nothing is instant. Nothing is simple." Emily nodded, barely breathing. "I understand." Harold sat across from her and opened the first folder. On the top page was her father's legal name. Not Samuel Hart. Jonathan Ashford. Hart IV. Emily stared until the letters blurred. "No," she whispered. "That's not my father." Harold's voice was gentle. "It is the name he was born with." Emily gripped the edge of the chair. The man in the photograph. The attorneys at the memorial. The careful instructions. Ethan's rush to divorce. All of it seemed to gather around that name like a storm forming without sound. Harold turned the page. "Emily," he said quietly, "your father spent 30 years preparing for this day." Emily stared at the name until her eyes burned. Jonathan Ashford Hart IV. It sat at the top of the page in clean black ink, formal and undeniable, attached to her father's date of birth, his social security number, and a notarized identity declaration signed years before his death. The numbers matched. The dates matched. The man did not. Samuel Hart had owned 2 pairs of work boots, 1 winter coat, and a habit of saving rubber bands in a coffee tin. He clipped grocery coupons. He repaired broken chairs instead of replacing them. He cut his own hair over the bathroom sink because he said barbers charged too much for 10 minutes of work. That man could not be Jonathan Ashford Hart IV. Emily pushed back from the table. There has to be a mistake. Harold did not rush to comfort her. That made it worse and better at the same time. He let her breathe. He let the paper sit between them like something alive. "There is no mistake," he said. "Your father legally changed his public name decades ago. Samuel Hart was the name he used in daily life. Jonathan Ashford. Hart IV was the name he was born with, the name tied to certain private trusts and family governance documents." Emily looked toward the photograph on the wall again. Her father as a younger man in that tailored coat standing at the edge of a group of executives. His face was familiar and strange. Same eyes, same guarded mouth, same quiet posture. But there was a distance in him she had never seen before, like he belonged to a room he hated. "Why would he hide this from me?" she whispered. Harold folded his hands. "Because he wanted you to be loved without your last name doing the work for you." The words struck deeper than any number could have. Emily thought of Ethan saying, "Your father, the janitor." She thought of Vanessa standing by her fireplace. Diane offering her furniture as if pity were generosity. Ethan's voice through the floorboards. "She doesn't have the money." "He let people look down on him," Emily said. "For years." "He allowed people to reveal themselves," Harold corrected gently. "There is a difference." Emily swallowed hard. Her anger had nowhere to go. Not yet. It mixed with grief until she could barely tell which was which. Her father had carried a secret large enough to change their lives. And still he had died in a care facility, with Emily holding his hand, asking if he was comfortable. "He should have told me." "Yes," Harold said. He believed that, too near the end. Emily looked at him. Harold reached for the sealed envelope, but did not open it. "This is not the full estate file. This is his first personal instruction to you. Before we read it, I need you to understand the legal position. The assets connected to the Hart family are not a simple inheritance. They include trusts holding companies, voting rights, restricted shares, and private governance agreements. Probate confirms certain personal property. Trustee review confirms your position in the larger structure. That process takes time." Emily let out a shaky breath. "So I don't just suddenly own everything?" "No. And anyone who tells you otherwise is either careless or trying to use you." That steadied her more than a fantasy would have. It sounded real. Complicated. Heavy. Harold slid a second folder toward her. "For now, what matters is protection. Your father anticipated that Ethan might move quickly if he believed you had nothing." The filing from Ethan's attorney activated a review clause. "We can notify your divorce counsel that estate-related matters are under confidential evaluation. That does not reveal your full position, but it prevents you from being pressured into uninformed financial disclosures." Emily looked at the folder but did not open it. "You already have divorce counsel. I have recommendations. You choose." "No one chooses for you. No one chooses for you." Emily almost cried then, not because of the money or the name, but because someone had said the thing her marriage had slowly taken from her. She nodded. "I want someone independent. Not connected to Ethan. Not connected to Vanessa. Not connected to his firm." "Good," Harold said. "That is exactly what your father hoped you would say." Emily looked down at her hands. "He planned for Ethan to leave me. He planned for the possibility that Ethan might value you only when he believed you were useful. Your father did not want to control your marriage. He wanted you safe if your marriage revealed something painful." The room went quiet. Outside the office window, traffic moved along the street below. Ordinary cars. Ordinary people. Life going on while Emily learned that the man who raised her had been both simpler and far more complicated than anyone knew. Harold opened the envelope at last. Inside was a single page in her father's handwriting. "Emily, if Harold is reading this with you, then the first door has opened. I am sorry I did not tell you sooner. I wanted you to know your own heart before the world tried to price it. I lived as Samuel because Samuel was the man I chose to become. But I was born into something larger, and I spent my life making sure it would not own you before you were ready." Emily pressed her hand to her mouth. Harold waited. She read the next lines herself. "If Ethan is still beside you with love, then let this be a burden you face together. If he has walked away because he thinks there is nothing to gain, let him keep walking. Do not chase a person who only turns back at the smell of money." Her tears finally fell quiet and hot. There was no revenge in the words, no command to destroy anyone. Only her father still protecting her without making hatred her inheritance. Emily folded the letter with trembling care. "I want copies of everything I'm allowed to have today." "Of course. And I want to meet the divorce attorney before Ethan's lawyer contacts me again." Harold gave the smallest smile. "I'll arrange it." Her phone buzzed on the table. "Ethan." She did not answer. A second later, a text appeared. "Where are you? My lawyer needs your financial disclosure by Friday. Don't make this harder than it has to be." Emily stared at the message. For the first time, she did not feel small reading his words. Then Harold's office phone rang. He answered, listened for less than 10 seconds, and his expression changed. "Yes," he said quietly. "Send it through secure review." He hung up and looked at Emily. "That was the trustee's office," he said. "They have confirmed receipt of your father's succession notice." Emily's fingers tightened around the letter. Harold turned the next folder toward her but kept his hand resting on top of it. "The money," he said, "isn't the biggest surprise." Emily did not ask about the money first. That surprised Harold. She saw it in the small pause before he opened the next folder. Maybe most people heard the word inheritance and reached for numbers. Emily reached for her father's letter instead. She smoothed the page with 2 fingers, careful around the places where her tears had darkened the ink. "What did he want me to do?" she asked. Harold's expression softened. "That is the question your father hoped you would ask." He turned the folder toward her. Inside were organizational charts, trust summaries, lists of entities with names that sounded deliberately plain. North Star Administrative Trust, Astor Holdings, Hart Governance Group, Ashford Family Office. No golden logos, no dramatic seals. Just clean documents, legal language, and signatures that carried weight Emily did not yet understand. "These are not all assets," Harold said. "Some are management structures. Some are voting vehicles. Some hold minority positions. Some hold controlling positions through layered agreements. Your father did not keep piles of money in bank accounts. He kept influence arranged carefully enough that it could survive greed divorce lawsuits and bad heirs." Emily looked at the charts. Lines connected one entity to another, then another, then another. It looked less like wealth and more like machinery. "My father built this. He inherited pieces of it," Harold said. Then he changed it. Quietly. After he left the Ashford family's public life, most people assumed he had walked away from everything. That was the story he allowed. But behind the scenes he remained a trustee, a voting advisor, and later the controlling steward of several private structures. He refused the lifestyle. He did not abandon the responsibility. Emily sat back slowly. The father she knew had swept school hallways, repaired broken lockers, and wrapped sandwiches in wax paper. The father she was meeting now had moved through legal systems and corporate structures with enough precision that grown men lowered their heads at his memorial. Both versions felt impossible together, yet neither felt false. He used to say power made people careless, Emily said. Harold nodded. He believed visible wealth made people perform. Invisible responsibility made people reveal character. Ethan had revealed his. The thought came before she could stop it, and it hurt with a sharpness she had not expected. Not because Ethan's cruelty was new, because her father had seen it before she had been ready to admit it. Harold tapped one document. The trustee review confirmed this morning that your father's succession notice was received. That does not mean you immediately control everything. There will be identification, verification, conflict checks, tax review, governance approval, and a formal acceptance process. You will have independent counsel. You will receive financial education if you want it. You can decline certain roles. You can delegate others. Emily looked up. I can say no. To some things, yes. To others, no. Some obligations pass automatically unless you disclaim them properly. That is why we move carefully. The realism steadied her again. No magic paper, no sudden crown, just responsibility arriving at the worst moment of her life. Her phone buzzed again. Ethan. She let it ring until it stopped. A text followed. You need to stop avoiding me. Vanessa thinks you're trying to punish everyone. My lawyer says if you cooperate, this can stay civil. Emily stared at the word civil until it lost meaning. Harold saw her face, but did not ask to read the message. That restraint earned more trust than any speech could have. I need my own divorce lawyer, Emily said. Today. I have already contacted 3 candidates. You will choose one after speaking with them. And I need a place to stay. Harold paused. There are family-owned residences available. Emily shook her head before he finished. Not yet. I don't want to step into a life I don't understand just because Ethan made the old one unbearable. Then we'll arrange a hotel under your own name, paid through a temporary estate expense account after approval. No. Emily folded her father's letter and placed it in her purse. I can pay for 2 nights myself. Harold studied her, then nodded. Your father would respect that. At home, Ethan was waiting in the driveway. He stood beside his car, arms crossed, jaw tight. He had changed out of his suit into a sweater Emily had bought him 2 Christmases ago. The sight of it made something inside her ache. She remembered saving for that sweater. She remembered him wearing it once, then saying it was too plain for client dinners. Now he wore it while ending their marriage. Where have you been? He demanded. With an attorney. His eyes narrowed. The estate guy Emily moved toward the door. My attorney. You're being ridiculous. You don't have anything that needs protecting. She stopped and looked at him. Then why are you worried? For 1 second he had no answer. Then anger stepped in to rescue him. Because I'm not letting you turn this into some victim performance. Vanessa already feels terrible about the timing. Emily almost laughed again. Vanessa felt terrible. Not because she had walked into another woman's home. Not because she had sat beside Ethan while divorce papers were placed on the table. Because the timing made her look bad. Tell Vanessa she doesn't need to concern herself with my grief, Emily said. Ethan stepped closer. Don't talk about her like that. The old Emily would have apologized. This Emily simply unlocked the front door. Inside the house felt different. Not safer, just smaller. The walls Ethan had used to make her feel trapped now looked temporary. She went upstairs and packed 1 suitcase. Clothes, toiletries, her father's jacket, the blue mug, the fireproof box. Ethan followed her to the bedroom doorway, watching with growing irritation. So you're leaving now? He asked. For tonight. Good. Maybe some space will help you think clearly. Emily zipped the suitcase. It already has. His face hardened. Don't expect me to chase you. She looked at him then. Really looked at him. The man who thought leaving was power because he had never understood staying with love. I don't, she said. She carried the suitcase downstairs herself. Ethan did not offer to help. That felt right somehow. Honest at last. At the door, her phone buzzed again, but this time, it wasn't Ethan. Harold had sent a secure message. Trustee office has requested an in-person preliminary briefing. A board chairman from Hart Governance wants to meet you privately tomorrow. Emily stood on the porch with her suitcase in one hand, her father's jacket folded over her arm, and Ethan behind her, still convinced she was walking into weakness. Then she read the final line. Certain voting rights may require your approval before the end of the week. Emily read the message twice before she moved. Certain voting rights may require your approval before the end of the week. Behind her, Ethan was still standing in the doorway, watching her with that familiar impatience. He saw a suitcase, a grieving wife, and a woman finally leaving because he had pushed hard enough. He did not see the message on her phone. He did not see the first quiet thread of power being placed in her hands. "Are you waiting for me to feel bad?" he asked. Emily locked her screen. "No, then go." She looked at him for one long second. There were so many things she could have said. That he had mistaken softness for dependence. That Vanessa did not love him the way he thought she did. That Harold Whitmore knew more about their marriage than Ethan could imagine. But none of it was useful yet. So Emily picked up her suitcase and walked to her car. She spent that night in a modest hotel near downtown Albany. Not the kind Ethan would have chosen. No marble lobby, no rooftop bar, just clean sheets, a locked door, and a desk where she spread out everything she had protected from the house. Her father's letter, the death certificate, the divorce papers, Harold's card, the fireproof box. Samuel Hart's key ring lay beside all of it, dull and ordinary under the hotel lamp. Emily took photos of Ethan's latest messages and saved them to a folder on her phone. Then she forwarded them to the divorce attorney Harold had recommended, a woman named Marisol Grant, who had spoken to Emily that evening with calm firmness and no pity. Marisol had not promised victory. She had promised process. That felt safer. At 9 o'clock the next morning, Emily returned to Whitmore Legal Group. This time Harold was not alone. A woman in her late 50s stood when Emily entered the conference room. She wore a gray suit and carried herself with the composed weight of someone used to difficult rooms. Beside her sat a man Emily recognized from the memorial hall, the older one with the leather folder. Mrs. Hart Harold said, "This is Lorraine Bishop, interim chair of Hart Governance Group, and this is David Mercer, senior trustee liaison." Lorraine extended her hand. "Emily, I'm very sorry for your loss." There was no performance in her voice, no hunger, no curiosity, just respect and something close to grief. Emily shook her hand. "Did you know my father Lorraine's face changed slightly?" "Professionally, yes. Personally, as much as he allowed anyone to." Emily sat down slowly. Harold placed a folder in front of her. "Today is only a preliminary briefing. Nothing you decide today will transfer full control, but a time-sensitive issue exists." Lorraine opened her tablet. Hart Governance holds voting authority across several private investment vehicles. Most decisions continue through standing trustee procedures. But your father reserved certain consent rights for his successor. Those rights are narrow, but important. Emily looked from Lorraine to Harold. "And I'm the successor pending verification and acceptance," Harold said. "Yes." The words still did not feel real. Lorraine turned the tablet toward her. "One of the entities under review has been approached for a strategic consulting partnership involving Westbridge Consulting." Emily went still. "Ethan's company." Lorraine noticed. "You're familiar with them." "My husband works there." Harold did not look surprised. That told Emily enough. Lorraine's expression remained professional. Then we need to be careful. We are not asking you to approve or reject anything today. In fact, because of the personal conflict, you may need to recuse yourself from direct decision-making until council reviews it. But your father's death triggered a temporary hold on several approvals. Westbridge is one of them. Emily looked at the document. She did not understand every line, but she understood enough. Ethan's world was already brushing against hers without knowing it. The company he bragged about, the ladder Vanessa admired, the future he had chosen over her. It was sitting in a folder under her father's hidden name. "Does Ethan know Heart Governance is connected?" she asked. "No," Lorraine said. "The public-facing entity is Astor Holdings. Westbridge would likely view it as a high-value client with private capital. They would not know the family structure unless they were cleared past the first stage." Emily almost heard Ethan's voice. "I need people around me who see bigger than this." He had no idea how close he was standing to the thing he worshipped. Her phone buzzed on the table. Ethan again. This time she looked. "Just so you know, Vanessa and I are moving forward. You should accept reality. Also, my meeting tomorrow could change everything for my career, so don't create drama." Emily felt no urge to reply. She turned the phone face down. Lorraine's eyes flicked toward it, but did not ask. "There is more," David Mercer said quietly. "Your father left a governance note attached to the Westbridge file. It was dated 6 weeks before his death." Emily looked at him. "My father knew about this company. He reviewed the first stage inquiry personally." Harold opened another document and slid it across the table. At the bottom in her father's handwriting was a short note. "If Westbridge proceeds, successor must be briefed before any final consent. Watch for conflicts around Ethan Cole Hart." Emily's breath caught. Her father had written Ethan's full name. Not angrily, not emotionally, like a risk marker in a file. Lorraine spoke gently. "Your father was careful. He did not interfere in your marriage. But he made sure no one could use your ignorance against you." Emily looked down at the note until the ink blurred. For years, she had thought her father's quietness meant he accepted the way people underestimated him. Now she understood something worse, and more beautiful. He had been watching, not to control her, to protect the line between love and exploitation. A knock came at the conference room door. Harold's receptionist stepped in holding a printed email. Her face was tight. "Mr. Whitmore, this just came through from Westbridge's Business Development Office." Harold took it, read the first page, and his jaw set. Lorraine leaned forward. "What is it?" Harold looked at Emily. "Ethan's team has requested expedited approval for tomorrow's executive meeting," he said, "and Ethan is listed as the lead presenter." Harold placed the printed email on the table. Emily did not touch it at first. She looked at Ethan's name halfway down the page listed beneath Westbridge Consulting's logo as lead presenter and felt a strange quiet settle over her. Ethan had spent months making her feel like she stood outside the world of ambition and power. Now he was knocking on a door her father had built into the wall. Lorraine read the email again, her expression controlled. "They're requesting expedited access to the Astor Holdings Executive Committee. Can they do that?" Emily asked. "They can request it," Lorraine said. "We can decline delay or proceed under review. Because of your personal connection, we need documentation before any decision moves forward." Harold turned to Emily. "This is exactly why your father built safeguards. You are not going to punish Ethan. You are not going to rescue him. You are going to let process do what process exists to do." Emily nodded slowly. That distinction mattered. She could feel anger inside her, but anger was not a plan. Her father had not left her a weapon. He had left her a structure. Across town, Ethan believed he was already winning. He stood in Westbridge's glass-walled conference room with Vanessa beside him, watching his senior director scan the email from Astor Holdings. Vanessa wore a cream blazer and a smile sharp enough to pass for confidence. She had helped Ethan polish the proposal, not because she understood every detail, but because she understood ambition and how to make men believe wanting something was the same as deserving it. "This is huge," she said quietly. "Astor does not open executive channels for small players." Ethan straightened his cuffs. "That's why I pushed. They needed to see we were serious." His director, Mark Feldman, looked up from the screen. They asked for additional conflict disclosures. Ethan's smile faded slightly. "Standard compliance," maybe Mark said. But they specifically requested personal relationship disclosures tied to any pending estate trust or domestic legal matter. Vanessa's eyes flicked to Ethan. Ethan laughed once too quickly. "That has nothing to do with this." "You're in the middle of a divorce," Mark said. "A simple divorce. No assets, no complications." Mark did not look convinced. "Then disclose it cleanly. We're not risking an institutional client because you don't want paperwork." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Fine." Vanessa touched his arm under the table. "It'll be okay," she murmured. "Emily can't affect this." That was what Ethan believed, too. Emily was grief-old furniture, cheap dresses, school janitor memories. Emily was the woman who asked before spending money, who mended sleeves, who kept a chipped mug because sentiment mattered more to her than style. She was not boardrooms and approvals. She was not private capital. She was not the kind of woman who could stand between him and a deal. Back at Whitmore Legal Group, Emily met Marisol Grant in a smaller office with warm lamps and shelves full of thick legal volumes. Marisol was direct, careful, and nothing like the TV lawyers Ethan loved to quote. "I reviewed the papers he gave you," Marisol said. "They are preliminary but aggressive. He wants fast disclosure, fast settlement, and a waiver of certain future claims. You should not sign anything right now." Emily folded her hands in her lap. "He thinks there's nothing to disclose. Then he will have to learn patience." Marisol slid a document toward her. "We'll file notice of representation. We'll request standard timelines. We will not reveal confidential estate matters unless legally required, and we will not let his attorney pressure you into waivers before probate review." Emily read the first page carefully. For the first time in years, she did not sign just because someone placed paper in front of her. "Can I ask something?" she said. "Of course. If the estate becomes real, if the trust things become real, will Ethan be able to claim it?" Marisol did not answer quickly, and Emily respected that. "It depends on timing, documents, state law, trust structure, marital property rules, and what was already separate before or during the marriage," Marisol said. "No honest lawyer would give you an absolute answer today, but from what I've seen so far, your father planned carefully. Ethan's hurry may not help him the way he thinks it will." Emily looked down at her father's keyring in her purse. He always fixed things before they broke. Marisol's face softened. "Then let him help you now by following the process he left." That afternoon, Emily moved into the hotel for a second night. She declined the family residence again. She ordered soup from the restaurant downstairs and ate it at the desk while reviewing Marisol's engagement letter. Her hands still shook sometimes. Grief came in waves. Betrayal did too. But beneath both, a new steadiness was beginning. She no longer felt like she was waiting for Ethan to decide her future. At 7:12 p.m., Ethan called. Emily let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a text arrived. "My attorney says you hired someone." "Really, Emily? You're turning this ugly over nothing." Then another. "Vanessa thinks you're being manipulated by that estate lawyer. Your father probably left debt, and now they're trying to bill you." Emily stared at the screen. Debt. That was the only explanation Ethan could imagine. A poor man's daughter could only inherit problems. She saved the messages and forwarded them to Marisol. The next morning, Westbridge's executive meeting began in a conference room on the 32nd floor of a downtown office tower. Ethan stood at the head of the table, polished and confident, with Vanessa, seated along the wall as part of the support team. Astor Holdings representatives appeared on the screen first. Then Lorraine Bishop joined remotely. Ethan launched into his presentation with practiced warmth. 10 minutes in the door at the back of the room opened. Harold entered first. Then Emily walked in beside him, wearing a simple navy dress, her father's old keyring tucked inside her purse, and a temporary visitor badge that read, Heart Governance Review. Ethan stopped mid-sentence. For a full second, he only stared. Then, in front of his director, Vanessa, and the entire review panel, he whispered the one word he could not make sense of. Emily. The room went silent in a way Emily had never heard before. It was not the silence of grief. It was not the silence of shock after bad news. It was the silence of people recalculating power in real time. Ethan stood at the head of the table with one hand still lifted toward the screen, the frozen slide behind him showing Westbridge's proposed strategy for Astor Holdings. His mouth remained slightly open around her name. Emily did not answer him. Harold pulled out the chair beside Lorraine Bishop's screen-facing seat. Mrs. Hart will observe this portion of the review, he said calmly. Given the conflict disclosures requested yesterday, her presence is appropriate under Governance Council's supervision. Mark Feldman looked from Harold to Emily, then to Ethan. Mrs. Hart Ethan's face turned red. She's my wife. We're separated. Vanessa shifted in her chair against the wall. Her cream blazer suddenly looked too bright under the conference room lights. Emily sat down without looking at her. Lorraine's voice came through the speaker, measured and cool. For the record, Mrs. Hart is present as part of a confidential governance review related to the Astor Holdings engagement. She will not make a unilateral decision in this meeting. Any final evaluation will proceed through Compliance Trustee Review and Conflict Council. That explanation did not reveal everything. It revealed enough. Ethan stared at Emily like she had walked into the room wearing someone else's face. What is this? Mark turned sharply. Ethan, sit down. I'm asking a question. And I'm telling you to sit down, Mark said, lower this time. Ethan sat, but his eyes never left Emily. For years he had corrected her in restaurants when she mispronounced a wine name. He had sighed when she asked about his work. He had told people she was sweet, but not business-minded, as if kindness were a polite disability. Now she sat across from him, with Governance Council beside her, and every person in the room was careful with her name. Harold opened a folder. Before Westbridge proceeds, Astor Holdings requires clarification regarding personal conflicts pending domestic litigation, and whether any member of the presenting team has attempted to obtain financial waivers from a party connected to the succession review. Mark's face tightened. Ethan swallowed. This has nothing to do with the proposal, Itmay Harold said. That is what review determines. Vanessa leaned forward. With respect, Mr. Whitmore, this feels personal. Harold looked at her for the first time. And you are, her confidence cracked at the edges. Vanessa Reed, senior client strategist. Are you also personally involved with Mr. Hart? The question was clean, professional, devastating. Vanessa's lips parted. Mark closed his eyes for half a second, as if the answer had already cost him something. Ethan stood again. That's inappropriate. No, Harold said. It is relevant. Westbridge represented this submission as free of undisclosed personal conflicts. Yesterday, your counsel demanded expedited financial disclosures from Mrs. Hart in an active divorce matter. Today, you are seeking expedited approval from an entity tied to her father's estate. Governance must determine whether the timing is coincidental negligent or something more serious. Emily kept her hands folded in her lap. Her heart was pounding, but her face stayed calm. Not because she felt powerful, because she understood now that calm was not emptiness. Calm was control returned to its owner. Mark turned to Ethan. "Did you know Mrs. Hart had any connection to Astor?" "No," Ethan said quickly. "Of course not." "She doesn't." The words hung there. She doesn't. Even then, with Emily seated beside Governance Council, Ethan could not bring himself to imagine she might be more than the story he had built about her. Lorraine spoke from the screen. "Mr. Hart, please understand. Mrs. Hart's connection is not a matter for you to define." The color drained from his face. Vanessa looked at Emily then. Really looked. Not at her dress, not at her shoes, at her face. For the first time there was no smirk, only calculation, then fear. Emily said nothing. Mark cleared his throat. "We will pause Westbridge's presentation pending internal review." Ethan turned toward him. "Mark, you can't be serious. This is the biggest opportunity we've had all year, and you failed to disclose a conflict connected to both your divorce and a potential institutional client," Mark said. "I'm not risking the firm because you wanted to move fast." Ethan's gaze snapped back to Emily. "Did you do this?" There it was. Not guilt, not apology, accusation. Emily finally looked at him. "No," she said. "You did." The sentence was quiet, but it landed harder than if she had shouted. Ethan's jaw worked like he was trying to find a version of reality where he still stood above her. "You expect me to believe your father had anything to do with this?" Harold closed the folder. "Mr. Hart, you are no longer asking the questions in this room." That was the moment Ethan understood the meeting was over, not because Emily had ruined him, not because she had exposed every secret, but because the world he had tried to climb into had rules, and for once those rules did not bend around his confidence. Outside the conference room, Vanessa caught up to him, near the elevators. "What didn't you tell me?" she hissed. Ethan spun on her. "I didn't know. She was sitting with Astor's Governance Council." "I said I didn't know." Vanessa's voice dropped. "You told me she was nothing." Ethan had no answer. Inside the conference room, Emily remained seated while Harold, Mark, and Lorraine discussed next steps. Her role was still limited, her authority still under review. But everyone spoke as if her consent, her conflict, and her protection mattered. Then Lorraine's assistant appeared on the screen and leaned toward her. Lorraine listened, then looked directly at Emily. "The trustees have completed the preliminary verification," she said. "They're ready to issue temporary succession authority pending final probate." Harold turned to Emily, his expression solemn. "If you accept," he said, "Westbridge's file will be one of the first matters placed under your protected review." 10. The final probate order arrived on a quiet Monday morning. Harold handed Emily a single envelope before anyone else entered the conference room. "This one," he said softly, "came directly from your father. He asked that you read it only after everything else was settled." Emily waited until she was alone. Inside was a handwritten letter. "My dearest Emily," it began. "If you are reading this, then you know more about my past than I ever wanted the world to know. I never hid our family's name because I was ashamed of it. I hid it because I wanted one person in this world to love you without calculating your value." She stopped for a moment, blinking through tears. "Money can protect people, but it cannot teach character. If someone stays only after learning who you are, they never truly knew you. If someone leaves because they believe you have nothing, they have already shown you everything you needed to see. My greatest gift to you was never this estate. It was the freedom to choose your life without needing anyone's permission." Emily folded the letter carefully. For the first time since her father's death, the weight inside her chest felt lighter. Weeks later, the divorce became final through the normal legal process. The trust remained protected exactly as her father had designed it, and every review disclosure and transfer had been completed through proper courts and trustees. There had been no shortcuts. Ethan asked if she would meet him one last time. They sat across from each other in a quiet coffee shop, where they had once celebrated their first anniversary. He looked older than she remembered. Not because of time, but because regret had settled into him. "I was wrong," he said. "Not because of the money, because I stopped seeing you long before I left." Emily listened without interrupting. "I thought ambition meant chasing bigger opportunities," he continued. "I didn't realize I had abandoned the best person in my life." She believed he meant every word. That did not change what had happened. "I accept your apology," she said gently. "But forgiveness isn't the same as going back." He lowered his eyes and nodded. He had not come expecting another chance. He finally understood that some losses were permanent because of the choices that created them. When they stood to leave, neither reached for the other. It was enough. Months later, the Hart Foundation announced a nationwide initiative honoring custodians, maintenance workers, cafeteria staff, and countless overlooked employees who quietly kept schools and public buildings running every day. Scholarships, emergency assistance, and professional development grants were funded in her father's name, not as a billionaire, but as the man almost everyone remembered simply as Mr. Hart, the school janitor, who never walked past someone who needed help. Emily attended the opening ceremony without a speech about wealth. She thanked the workers. She thanked the volunteers. Then she quietly stepped away. That afternoon, she drove to the old elementary school one final time. The hallways smelled exactly as they always had. Fresh wax, old books, quiet memories. She unlocked the small storage locker Harold had preserved for her. Inside rested her father's worn leather work gloves. Nothing else. She picked them up with both hands. They were faded, cracked, and ordinary. They were worth more to her than every share certificate locked inside the family vault. As she walked out of the school, the afternoon sun stretched across the empty parking lot. She never looked back. She no longer needed to prove who she was. She already knew. If this story touched you, share your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe dignity is worth more than wealth, we'd love to hear where you're watching from, and hope you'll join us again for another unforgettable story.